When it was first built in 1921, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit was almost 14 kilometres, and for nearly 50 years it was one of the fastest circuits in the world. In 1973, Pescarolo set the world speed record on the Tour Road with an average speed of 262.461. But Francorchamps is also very dangerous, and that is why the track was shortened by half in the early 80s. In short, Spa-Francorchamps is a circuit that is part of the history of motor racing, along with Silverstone, Monaco and Le Mans. So it's completely legitimate that every year in May, the Belgian Ardennes resonates to the sound of old at the Spa Classic. For the 2016 event, there are 6 categories competing, and a rare image. We have put together a model of each of these categories to run a few laps. Classic Endurance Series, Heritage Touring Cup, Trofeo Nastro Rosso, 60s Endurance and Group C. Close to 250 race cars are gathered in the paddock and all around. The public arrived in their droves to take in this wonderful sight, despite the freezing cold, as only the region of Spa may surprise us with in mid-May. The cars of the Classic Endurance Category 2 that ran between 1975 and 1981 for the GTs and 1972 and 1981 for the prototypes. Just as the Epoch, the cars again crossed swords with the GT, and at Spa Classic, they have once again offered a great show. Alongside the Lola prototypes, Chevron, March and Osella, to name a few. And here we can see CER2 GT and the cars of the legendary Group 5. The best known are of course the Porsche 935, but during the short life of the Group 5 between 1976 and 1982, some manufacturers have developed cars around that very liberal regulation that ultimately makes these cars real silhouettes built around a tubular chassis and powered by highly specialised engines in the image of the BMW 320i of Charles Weyer, a car rebuilt exactly the same as the BMW model in 1977.
Vraiment rien à voir avec la voiture de série.
It really has nothing in common with the series car because there are a lot of specific developments on the running gear to lower the car, the engine also. It really is a silhouette.
On appelait ça une silhouette.
The start of the race was dominated by Martin O'Connell in his Chevron B23, but soon the Brit retires on the track of Spa, suffering a mechanical failure.
We had a problem with the wheel at the beginning, and so we had a puncture, and then we've lost the rear brake, so it was not a good day for us today.
This is the everlasting Jürgen Barth, associated with Hubner, who wins in GTs, while victory in the prototype class goes to Dominique Guéna, who cleverly bided his time while his main opponents gave up one after another.
I'm drinking, mate.
The 60s endurance race is definitely one of the highlights of the Spa Classic weekend. During 2 hours, cars dating from 1950 to 1965 brawl on track, and the drivers do not spare the horses. In fact, it's quite the contraire. Of course, the cars lined up are old, but most are refurbished, and sometimes even more powerful than before. So there is no reason to preserve the mechanics. Once behind the wheel, drivers are there to race and to win. There is plenty of overtaking. The contact is not rare. In short, the 60s endurance is competitive. The variety of cars on track is impressive, with a strong German presence of Porsche 911, 904 and 356. Of course, the English who ruled the endurance in the 50s and 60s are also well represented. The light and agile Lotus, the impressive Jaguar E-Type, Austin Healey, and the Triumphs, like this TR4, which was more used to a jaunt through the countryside than racing on track. And then the Aston Martin DB2, 1952, a car that was part of the fleet of vehicles of the Belgian royal family, and the current owner has decided to engage in competition. It's really fantastic to drive an Aston Martin. This is a very honest car. She slips, but you can catch it easily. The brakes are not great at all because it has the original drum brakes, but otherwise it works fine. It's very nice. A bit heavy, and the brakes are only a problem if we forget to slow down, so all is good. In 60s endurance, it's the Shelby Cobra that dominates in Spa. They monopolised the first 5 places in the race, with an excellent performance from Christophe Van Riet at his home circuit. Ludovic Caron could not do anything. He must be content with finishing first runner-up. At Spa Classic, we fight on track and we party in the paddock. There are numerous activities and entertainment for the spectators. No time to get bored, there is something for all tastes and all ages. Traditionally, this circuit draws the crowds, and among the events held at Spa-Francorchamps, the 24 Hours is arguably the most popular of all. By the mid-1960s until the end of the last century, the 24 Hours of Francorchamps was the biggest touring car race in the world. It is therefore no coincidence that the Heritage Touring Cup reassembles an impressive array of classic cars. The paddock is well stocked, among them the Alfa Romeo GTV, VW Scirocco, Volvo, and of course Ford Escort and Capri. Not forgetting the big Americans like the Chevrolet Camaro. They ran platoons in touring races for many years without ever managing to win in major races, though it came close to thwart all the prognostics in 1978.
Belonged to a woman driver named Henny Hammes, who took the pole position in the 24 Hours of Spa in 1978 with this car, and it competed several times in the 24 Hours. They were leading for 16 hours that year, and they had to discontinue because of a broken axle.
But the history of touring car racing is intertwined with that of BMW, or the reverse. The brand with the propeller, which turns 100 this year, has won 22 times in the Ardennes, and one classic car in particular among all BM models marked the spirits, the 3-litre CSL Batmobile.
It's a BMW Motorsport shell that was bought naked and brought to Luigi Cimarosti, who lives 30 kilometers from here and ran some very successful ETCC teams in the 70s. And the car was built 30 kilometers from here and was very successful in the ETCC for 3 years running. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people know it because it is the highest finishing CSL ever in Le Mans history.
The story is repeated at Spa Classic because it's a CSL that prevails in the first of two races, led by Eric Mestar and Pierre-Alain Tipo. To get the most out of the 24 hours, the second race took place at nightfall. This time, the BMW bites the dust against another icon, the Ford Capri. The brand with the blue oval will offer a combined attack with 5 cars in the top 5 places, and victory for the Capri 2600 RS of Yves Shemama.
J'ai un ami américain qui s'appelle Jim Pace. J'ai demandé au
At Le Mans Classic, I asked my friend Jim Pace what his secret to driving fast in the night is, and he said, "I think the car does not know it's
La
night."
voiture, elle sait pas qu'il fait nuit.
As tradition, Saturday night after the HTC race at the Drivers' Club at Le Rouge, the party celebrates the many drivers of Spa Classic. Although it did not last all night, the party was a great success. In the classic endurance box, the mechanics of the Pantera number 21 reposition the gearbox after a clutch change. This car is driven by Ralph Kellner, one of those accustomed to racing in modern historical events.
And in a modern car, a lot of things get done for you. You know, you shift at the steering, you have traction control, everything's much simpler. So the benefit of driving this is you step out of the car and you feel like, wow, that was, you know, an adventure. So I appreciate driving cars from the 70s a lot.
The CER1 are cars built from 1966 to 1971 for the prototypes and up to 1974 for the GTs. Again, the variety of this category is impressive. And sometimes there are real jewels, like the Alfa Tipo 33.3, driven by Nani Gali, who in the 1960s was the official driver for Alfa Romeo Auto Delta. For Nani, the 33 is a real institution.
Ma tutto a quel tempo l'Alfa Romeo era un'azienda.
At that time, Alfa Romeo was a state enterprise and was very influenced by politics. And unfortunately, this has not much to do with the sport. However, the regretful engineer Chiti made a lot for Auto Delta. The Alfa Romeo Tipo 33 was the first with 2-litre and a 3-litre engine, and then they made the 33 3-litre 12-cylinder that won the World Championship in 1975. The Alfa T33 didn't finish top of the rankings in the race in CER1 at Spa. Another myth on 4 wheels present in the Belgian Ardennes, the Ford P68. In 1968, in fact, she started on pole for the 1,000 kilometre of Spa. There were only 3 of this splendid prototype replacement for the Ford GT40 built, and she still remains beautiful and finishes at the foot of the podium at this year's Spa Classic. Starting from pole position, Sandy Watson, associated with Martin O'Connell, have led the whole race on board their Chevron B19 to win ahead of another Chevron of Philippe Bruweiler. The Spa Classic is also an opportunity for fans to get together to talk about mechanics, collection and love of these old machines. Almost 1,500 cars from clubs were given a plot in the paddock of the most beautiful circuit in the world. Some even enjoyed running on the track on sessions reserved for some hot laps. And in the Automobilia village in the heart of the paddock, it's also an opportunity to find some rarities to complete a collection, or even start one. Back on track with the most prestigious of all, the Trofeo Nastro Rosso cars. These are the Italian sports cars and GT cars of 1950 to 1965, the most beautiful bodies and noble mechanics. And in the Trofeo, we meet a driver who would have been more legitimate in the HTC category. Lucien Goutenet, former champion of France in Super Touring. He has competed at the 24 Hours of Spa 16 times, but this is Spa Classic and he's driving an Alfa TZ.
C'est un petit peu la mise en place de ce que j'ai vécu quand j'étais.
This is actually the implementation of what I experienced when I was very young. I saw these Alfas who had good results, so to go back now to those cars that made me dream at age 15 after driving many cars in my career, well, it's a great passion.
Une voiture qui me faisait rêver quand j'avais 15 ans, eh ben ma foi, pour moi c'est une vraie passion, quoi.
At the wheel of such jewels, drivers of course must race, but with exceptional respect for the mechanics and for opponents. Perhaps even more than in other categories, each of the Trofeo Nastro Rosso drivers maintain a close relationship with their car. I cannot really explain it. I'm fused with this car, who is gorgeous. On the track, we dance with the car. I really think this is the most beautiful car Ferrari has created. It is a Ferrari that wins both races at Spa Classic, the 275 GTBC of Vincent Gay, 2 victories for a local who mounted the podium with his grandchildren. This is undoubtedly the most anticipated moment of the weekend. The Group C races, 1 week after the WEC, are here in Spa and finds the ancestors of today's 24 Hours of Le Mans cars. Group C is part of the Peter Auto series since this year. They are owners and enthusiasts, but most of all drivers. And when a driver takes on the challenge in Group C, it's probably the most beautiful thing there is. And in addition, the Group C in Spa, we can say, is right. And finally, we will know even more at the beginning of July for the Group C will join for the first time Le Mans Classic in the opening race. Nearly 60 cars have already been confirmed. Unfortunately, there was contact during the qualification. The Peugeot 905 will not race. We will miss one of the most stunning cars on track. A small green car caught our attention. The Alfa. This is the oldest of the Group C category, and its history is just amazing.
Je l'ai cherché de partout pendant des années et je l'ai retrouvé à Venise, cette voiture.
I searched around for years and found it in Venice.
Qui était pilote.
This is the story of Mr. Finotto, who was a driver and immensely rich, who won with this car.
Cette voiture a été championne du monde en 83.
It was world champion in its class in 1983 with an Emiliano Karma engine. Karma made a car out of the ordinary. He made a 4-cylinder turbo, and of course that was so powerful that he fought against the C1 and before all the C2. And this is the history of this Alfa. It's thanks to enthusiasts such as Jean-Marie that such cars still run today for our delight. And speaking of pleasure, what can we say? Just watch and listen to this. The Jaguar XJR-14 is a formula with a body, a car so effective that it was unbeatable in qualifying, but unfortunately very unreliable on races over 6 hours. Spa Classic victory was almost inevitable for Christoph Asenborg, until he was caught out by the rain whilst on slicks. Suddenly, the Porsche 962 had the free field to win, but they were not counting on the talents of Robin Ward, driving his Spice SE90C, who went for second place, the second time beating the France family. Victory goes to Mark Sumter with a lap record of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, to be compared with the time of 1 minute 59 succeeded by Porsche a week earlier at the WEC race in bright sunshine. The 962 and 919 models are 27 years apart, less than a second a lap per year.
With these Porsches you can turn the boost down and they make them a lot easier to drive. Obviously the lap time suffers, but we didn't need the lap time at the end of the race, so the last sort of 5 laps were just a nice cruise round to the flag. But yeah, really good fun. I really enjoyed it. It's my first Group C race since 2008, so I'm really enjoying it.
The Jewels leave the Spa circuit. The Peter Auto racing season continues with stops in Dijon, Paul Ricard and Imola. And then, of course, this year's Le Mans Classic in early July, a foolproof biannual event.